Okay. So pleased to be here. Thank you all for having all of us. I think this has been really great so far. So I hope to build on some things that have already been mentioned by Gail and Maria and to have a really productive discussion after the fact. That's the reason I'm most excited about being here is I've never had the opportunity to actually talk to publishers, which seems like I should be doing that, right? So I'm glad to be in the room with you all. So I believe that, that scholarly communication should be about authors making well-informed decisions about their scholarship, rather than libraries and publishers fighting over who's right or wrong about open access. And as a point of clarity, when I'm talking about publishers most of the time throughout this presentation, I'm meaning the commercial journal publishing industry, and I draw that distinction between university presses and society or association publishers because I think that it's a distinction that needs to be made, and we need to talk about the differences between publishers. We tend to throw it up against the wall and say publishing is one monolithic thing, and I don't think that's the case, and I think those roles are evolving in different ways. So as I'm talking through this, when I'm talking about publishers, most often I'm meaning commercial publishing industry, journal publishing industry. So the discussion of mandates, which we've heard some about already, and what the title or the focus of the panel is, or open access policies, however you want to refer to them, or how much control authors should have over their own work. It only really applies when faculty members are involved, or when scholarly authors are involved. So I opted not to address it at all. I'd rather address the underlying issue, and it's an issue that I'm calling the miseducation of scholarly communication. So scholarly communication is about scholars communicating. I don't tend to make a habit of quoting Mark Zuckerberg. I'd like to think that I'm quoting his speechwriter or publicist here, but I agree with the sentiment here that information should feed communication, and that good information should feed good communication. I believe that there's an inherent miseducation in scholarly communication that has developed, and it's rooted in the author's general lack of information, and we might even say the lack of interest in information about the academic publishing system that we all work in, that we function in together. And it's not to their fault, right? So over the past 3 to 5 years, we've made this conversation about libraries versus publishers, or what stake we have in this, or what stake you have in this, who's more right than the other, or how well we can argue our point on one another's blog posts, rather than offering good information to authors about their stake in this system, in academic publishing. And I can only speak to the last 3 to 5 years because that's all I really know. So I'll say a little bit about who I am and why you may care to listen to me and maybe not. And I apologize for this slide. It looks really great on my screen right here, but the important information is in the corner there. So I'm a librarian and probably not the kind you've ever worked with. Probably the worst kind. I've never done reference. I've never put together a collection development plan, never had the opportunity to establish a relationship with a vendor. I've never once recommended a book to a patron, never had a budget to oversee. Best yet, faculty, librarians at Florida State University are untenured faculty. We're a specialized type of faculty category. So I have nothing to lose by pushing and challenging and bucking the scholarly communication system as we know it. And I like it that way. I function really well in this way because I grew up in punk rock academy where my friends literally tattooed "Damn the Man" on themselves. I was hired out of library school into a scholarly communication position, and I've never known a non-open access way to work. Which means from the beginning of my career, my work has been built, my short career, 3 to 5 years, 2.5 actually. From the beginning of my career, my work has been built on challenging the norms of publishing. That's all I've ever known. My beef in this system is the lack of options and good information that's available and provided to authors who are the creators and suppliers and workers and consumers of academic publishing. And also the misconceptions about open access that are perpetrated by the system. But I didn't come to pick fights. I don't want to talk about my beef here. I don't even want to talk about mandates. I don't want to talk about open access. I'd like to talk about good information and sharing good information. The best possible system of scholarly communication, in my estimation, is one where the complexities, which are many, the stakeholders, and the evolution of the system are all transparent to the authors, creators, workers, consumers, of research, and where the authors, creators, workers, consumers, have the opportunity to decide what's best, how this system will evolve, how it will develop. Where information about how academic publishing works is clear and concise. And I think we're close to that point. We're getting to that point where authors are invested in this system in a new way because they can be, because these tools that we have in front of us make it available, because we have to have the conversation about mandates, about policies, about federal funding requirements. So authors are getting interested in their stake in the system. I think that's a really good thing. At this point in a presentation like this, a more radical person might mention the cost of knowledge statement that was started by Timothy Gowers as an example of how authors are involving themselves in the re-education of scholarly communication. Or they might bring up, a more radical person may bring up comparisons to the music or film industries where the indies and scrappy startups have worked to more closely align the creators with their works of creation. And I think those are all valid talking points and discussion points I think that we should be having, but I'd like to start more simply. So currently, my perspective of scholarly communication and academic publishing is that we're mired in a binary black and white system. It's publisher versus library, journal impact factor versus altmetrics, copyright versus fair use, green versus gold open access, authors guild versus HathiTrust, the scholarly kitchen versus Peter Suber. But we all know it's more gray than that, right? That across this great divide, this expanse of academic publishing where we're all working in a similar space, we all hold common misunderstandings of one another's work, of our investments and our interests in this work. So this miseducation of scholarly communication spreads to us as well. What I'd like to propose is a system or an evolution or a purpose or a focus where we embrace the gray, where publishers and libraries are on the same side of the fence, where we're speaking the same language, where we have the common goal is sharing good information within and among ourselves first, and then outside to other external stakeholders. Good factual information about how things really work, including especially the money that's involved in this system of scholarly communication. And finally, most importantly, the key point, where the authors' voices are equally valued and respected in the conversation. And I think we're starting to see examples of this here and there. Associations are starting to advocate for authors. Some of you, and I hope most of you maybe are familiar with the American Historical Association statement on embargo of ETDs. So they issued a statement last year, was it last year? This year. AHA issued a statement saying that, recommending that graduate students, especially in the area of history, should be allowed to choose their embargo, and they recommended a period of up to 6 years. A lot of people got really upset about that, thinking that 6 years is way out of line. The standard is 2, right, Gail? 2 years is kind of the one or 2 years is kind of the standard for embargoes. So AH up to 6. Huh? Well, there you go. So the fact, and one of the underlying things that was included in this statement was some information or facts about if your dissertation is available online, that you won't be able to publish it as a book, and that's the concern that AHA was bringing to the table. I think that those facts are a little bit fuzzy about whether or not that does actually, whether open access dissertation actually harms the publication prospects. I think that we have evidence that that is not necessarily so. But the heart of the statement that AHA issued, and I think that was overlooked and misinterpreted by a lot of librarians, was that authors and grad students who are authors of scholarly works should be allowed to choose how and when their dissertation is accessible. And that's something that I support. I think that if we're training the next generation of scholars, these grad students who are producing dissertations, and we're teaching them to be responsible about their rights and their stake in the system, in the document that they're producing as part of their graduate work, that's a good thing, and that will continue to be a good thing as they do that for other types of scholarship that they continue to produce in the future. One thing that I'd like to challenge you all on is that we haven't yet seen the publishing community work to inform graduate students about their rights and responsibilities in a world of digital dissemination. AHA, like I said, is standing up for this and advocating for their authors. I'd like to see the publishing community have really clear statements about the value or the pros or cons of having dissertations available online. That's something that is necessary as this is becoming the norm. As we have these mandates that apply to graduate scholarship, it's important that you all be providing clear, factual, good information to graduate students as well. Authors are beginning to advocate for themselves, and this is the best part about this, right? I had the pleasure of attending a conference back in March where an early career researcher from Mexico named Aaron McKiernan publicly pledged in front of a group of mostly librarians and policymakers and funders to value and act on her principles of open access rather than publishing where the system tells her that she should. So she stood in front of this group of people and said, I will, for the rest of my career, you know, she's 2 or 3 years into her work, for the rest of my career, I will publish open access. Point blank, that's it. Very, very bold claim from someone who's working in she works in the area of neuroscience and biomedical, and that could, you know, have sincere effects on her tenure and the future of her work. But it was important enough that she made that point to say, this matters and I have to take a stand on it. This is a great example of authors taking control of their stake in academic publishing, and this is something that I'd like to see more of and that I'd like to be behind supporting. And then publishers obviously are analyzing the market, looking at the author's perspectives, which then goes to inform the work of librarians. The Taylor and Francis Open Access Author Survey that came out last year has been invaluable to me in looking at and acknowledging the commonly held beliefs about open access, about publishing, about open access publishing versus open access archiving and repositories. This has been a great tool. The thing that bothers me and where this becomes a point of advocacy for me as a librarian is the I'm not sures, the maybes or the I'm not sures. Those are the categories where we need to be providing good factual information from the publisher side as well as from the library side. The second answer to this question here, I have to publish more often in open access journals due to mandates from my research funder or institute. More than 50% of the respondents either agreed with that or were not sure. And as far as I know, that's a false statement. Not that I know of, there are no mandates from a research funder or institute that require you to publish in an open access journal. Unless anyone knows of any. That's a false statement. And so this is a point of advocacy for me, that I know that faculty are, this is their perception, and so I can walk in the room and say, actually, you know, you do not have to publish in open access journals. That's not what any of these policies or mandates are asking you for you to do. That's just not the case. So this is a perfect illustration of the miseducation in this system. The value of having the author's voice represented and the opportunity that exists to provide good factual information, especially about funder open access policies or institutional open access policies as those become more widespread. So in practice, I'm pitching forward this idea of what a new system of scholarly communication would look like, where publishers and libraries and authors have a common stake in this, and where we all come together and have a conversation about it. So what would this system look like? I was very pleased to be served up with this example on a silver platter, so I didn't have to come up with an idea of how this system would look. The Authors Alliance, if you haven't heard of it, launched last week. It's an organization that was founded for the purpose of, and this is a quote from their mission, providing information and tools designed to help authors better understand and manage key legal, technological, and institutional aspects of authorship in the digital age. They're also